For my research project, I decided to look at the folklore surrounding American college campuses. I was specifically interested in the lore surrounding romance, luck, and ghosts. What really sparked my interest in this particular type of folklore was that I was walking along my own college campus and I saw a tree covered in wads of gum. At first, I was a little grossed out, but then I got to wondering why people would place their chewed gum on a tree instead of in the trash. I also wondered why this practice was done on this specific tree and not any other trees on school grounds. This curiosity led me to wondering about all sorts of traditions and stories across all types of American colleges. Since I am a student at Truman State University, I decided that the folklore on this campus would be my main focus and how it compared to other folklore from other American colleges. For my research, I decided to interview 2 Truman alumni and 3 current Truman students, so I could get a different perspective on what stories are most commonly spread through different times of the school's life. I also asked my informants if they knew of any other college folklore and found many similarities which also coincided with some research I had done previously. There was a sense of conservation and variation, but the heart of the stories told were the same. Like I said, for this project, I mainly focused on Truman State University folklore and compared those stories to other universities across the United States. The schools that I decided to mainly focus on were Iowa State University, the University of Kansas that I commonly heard was referred to as KU, Lee's McRae College in North Carolina, Georgia Southern University, and finally Northwest Missouri State University. Now, before I get into the specifics of the lore I collected, I want to talk about the 2 major ways these stories and traditions were passed around. The first way was by verbal means, such as talking with friends, faculty, or visiting alumni. I personally remembered that while I was on a tour of the campus my senior year of high school, my tour guide was a student and they shared some of the campus lore, besides just the typical history of buildings. The other major pathway is by personal observation. Many traditions are not shared outright but are passed on by having underclassmen watching and observing practices and traditions the upperclassmen partake in. Social media posts and articles published by the school also highlight on some of the college folklore as well. Now, some of you may be thinking, why would anyone share these things? And I actually came across 4 major reasons. The first reason is that sharing these stories can be entertaining. You can easily pass the time by telling stories you've heard about campus, and if you get a detail wrong, it's not going to alter the entertainment factor of the story. Educating others was another large reason for keeping these stories alive. When students start college, it's typically the first time they've been away from home and are truly an individual. This can lead to new and frightening experiences that are sometimes best understood by telling a story of someone who has previously gone through the same thing. Creating a community is a large part of the college life. Everyone rallies behind the school colors or mascot because it gives you an identity in a sea of individuals. Sharing traditions and stories are an easy way to meet new people and create a living link between current students and alumni. The last major reason I came across in my research was the will to believe. Everyone has those days where you feel like you need all the help you can get and think the only way you're going to pass a test, for instance, is by wishing on a star. There is no evidence that this practice works, but there's no harm in trying, and sometimes you want to try everything you can so you can proudly say, I did everything I could to make this go right, so if it doesn't, it's not really my fault. Okay, now to actually get into the lore. I want to first start off with the romantic traditions and stories. At Truman State, we have a garden called the Sunken Garden that is in the place of the original Baldwin Hall. It is said that if you are on a first date and share your first kiss with that individual in the garden at midnight, you will get married. When I first heard this, I thought there was no way another school will have a story like this. While they may not be completely the same, the heart of the tradition is similar. At Georgia Southern University, they have what they call the Sweetheart Circle, and they say that if you walk around the circle 3 times while holding your partner's hand, you'll get married. At Northwest Missouri State, they have something also similar, where they call the Kissing Bridge, and if you kiss someone at the halfway mark of the bridge, you'll also get married. While the details are slightly varied, all these stories lead to a marriage with the other individual you partake in the ritual with. These stories give hope to those who want romance, but also a small amount of assurance that they can have a happily ever after, too. Next is traditions and rituals pertaining to luck. At KU, there is this statue of a previous chancellor that many students during finals week will rub his nose to the point it turns gold, as you saw on the previous slide. At Truman State, there is a statue of Spike the Bulldog, our mascot, that is used in a similar ritual, where students will pet his nose or paw, and it will bring them luck on tests. Truman has another ritual that pertains to luck and is known as the gum tree, which sparked my interest in this topic in the first place. If you put a piece of gum on the tree, you'll get good grades. While this was not always the function of the gum tree, it has become a tradition that now pertains to getting good grades instead of just a place to put used gum when chewing gum was not allowed in the buildings. Iowa State, however, has a different type of ritual pertaining to luck. They have a fountain called the Four Seasons Fountain, and it is said if you walk on this fountain, you will fail all of your tests. The point behind these traditions is to give students hope that they can pass the difficult test or class, or give them a reason to blame something else for not passing. They also get the option to say that they really did do all they could in order to pass, whether that's rubbing a statue or avoiding a fountain. The last group of lore I want to talk about is ghosts. We're all familiar with ghost stories being told around campfires or in groups of friends. The sharing of ghost stories doesn't just stop when you go to college. They are still very prevalent in conversation. At Truman State, there is one ghost who seems to be slightly more popular than the rest. This ghost is named Charlotte, and she haunts what used to be an old dormitory called Grimm Hall, which is now used as a campus office space. Charlotte was a student at Truman who died, unfortunately, and depending on who you ask, she either died of hypothermia or lack of insulin due to being diabetic. Charlotte is known as a friendly ghost who had a tendency of playing matchmaker with students currently living in the hall. A slightly lesser talked about ghost at Truman is Joan, who resides in Centennial Hall. Joan was unfortunately killed in a car accident right in front of Centennial Hall where she lived. Joan is known as a protective ghost who looks after the students in her dormitory, much like a student advisor would. At Lee's McRae College, they also have a very popular ghost named Emily. Emily is said to have passed from tuberculosis. Emily is also not a malicious ghost, but is perhaps a little ornery from time to time by making some unnecessary noise, but is overall viewed as friendly, much like Charlotte and Joan. Now, these stories are all based off of real people who attended these schools and unfortunately passed away. These stories are a way to explain the unexplainable, such as random noises at night, and can be used as a way to remind students that the unknown doesn't have to be scary. It can lead to positive experiences. Before I end, I want to share a quote from a reputable folklorist named Kathy Preston that I felt really captured the why folklore is so important to college students. Students' local legends speak of students' fears of failure and of anesthetizing those fears. Ironically, though, those same legends perhaps also speak of students' hope of success. To wrap up my talk, I wanted to just reiterate a few points that I feel were the most important aspects of my research, and that is that all American colleges have folklore and is shared amongst those who are recognized as being part of the group. There is conservation and variation between the stories told and rituals partaked in, but they also show why these tales and traditions hold value and are still shared years after they originated. Thank you, and here are the resources I used during my research.